Today, we're diving into the most dangerous extremists around the world. Before we begin, for reference, extremism refers both to political ideologies and to methods through which political actors try to achieve their aims. Extremist political ideologies oppose the fundamental values of society and the principles of democracy and universal human rights by advocating racial, political, social, economic, and religious supremacy. The methods show disregard for others' life, liberty, and human rights. The extremist beliefs are zeal or profound convictions, and the extremist behaviors are reactions that deviate from the norm. Now let's take a look at which people top this list. The most dangerous and extreme of them all will be announced at the end of the video. Ahlam al-Tamimi is one of the FBI's most wanted terrorists, and the Rewards for Justice program of the U.S. Department of State is offering a reward of up to $5 million for information that leads to her arrest or conviction. Ahlam Ahmad al-Tamimi is a Palestinian terrorist and member of the terrorist organization Hamas. Hamas is a Palestinian fundamentalist and nationalist militant movement. Dozens of countries have designated the group as a terrorist organization due to violent attacks launched against Israel. However, al-Tamimi was released from prison in 2011 in a prisoner swap. Given her role in Hamas, al-Tamimi is on the FBI's most wanted terrorist list for conspiring to use and using a weapon of mass destruction against an American national outside the United States, resulting in death. The U.S. is also ready to award $5 million for her capture. After her release from prison, al-Tamimi hosted for 5 years a weekly talk show about Palestinian prisoners in Israel *, and has recently started writing an influential newspaper column. Tamimi was involved in the Sparrow restaurant bombing in 2001 in Jerusalem, which killed 15 people and wounded another 130, including 2 American. Ismail al-Wahwah is the leader of the Australia chapter of the international Islamist organization Hizb ut-Tahrir, HT. The party believes that Muslims who have renounced Islam must be executed, that the segregation of genders is fundamental, and that using violence against so-called enemies of Islam is righteous and justified, including many Muslim-majority countries. Many HT members have joined ISIS ranks. Al-Wahwah believes Australia is part of a US-led crusader invasion targeting the Muslim world. He justified the January 2015 attacks on French satirical magazine Charlie Hebdo as a cure for relieving pressure caused by daily humiliation of Muslims and insults to their book and prophet. Al-Wahwah has also been seen at past HT events with Haran Monis, the Islamist who took more than a dozen people hostage at a Sydney cafe in December 2014. Al-Wahwah espouses violent rhetoric and has claimed the world deserves an Islamic caliphate. His fiery views have been anti-Western, anti-Semitic, and anti-capitalistic. Al-Wahwah was arrested in 2018 in Jordan and was moved to a maximum security prison. Despite al-Wahwah's violent and extremist propaganda, he benefits from strong support in Australia. Groups of his supporters protested against his imprisonment in Sydney and Canberra. His platform and his capacity to spread hate is extensive, making him a dangerous individual. In the current climate in Australia, with the rise of right-wing extremism as well as Islamist extremism, such radical propaganda is extremely dangerous. Due to the tumultuous climate in Australia, the head of their domestic intelligence agency has warned that they are anticipating a terrorist attack in Australia in the months to come. HT calls for unifying Muslim-majority countries under a single global caliphate, while not advocating violence directly. However, individuals associated with HT have been involved in violent acts. In 2015, Bangladeshi police arrested Islamist blogger Farabi Shafiur Rahman in connection with the February 26, 2015, murder of atheist writer Avijit Roy. Police accused Rahman of belonging to HT and threatening over social media to kill Roy prior to his murder in a knife attack. In 2014, Iranian-born Australian man Haran Monis took more than a dozen people hostage at Sydney's Lindt Chocolate Cafe. Born in 1926, Yusuf al-Qaradawi is an Islamist theologian and the unofficial chief ideologue of the Muslim Brotherhood, a transnational Sunni Islamist movement that seeks to implement Sharia * under a global caliphate. Qaradawi is a vocal anti-Semite who preaches anti-Western propaganda and his radical Islamist ideology. His rhetoric and his militant ruling on the laws of Islam, known as fatwas, demean women, and promote violence against non-Muslims, demonstrating his support for terrorism and extremism. Qaradawi is a proponent of suicide bombings, saying martyrdom operations in which a given Muslim fighter turns himself or herself into a human bomb that casts terror in the hearts of the enemy, and has repeatedly urged Muslims to financially support Islamic fighters. In addition to supporting physical acts of extremism, Qaradawi is renowned for his violent rhetoric. Qaradawi has issued a number of fatwas encouraging attacks on Jewish people, and on the Arabic news network Al Jazeera, he stated in 2009, "O God, take your enemies, the enemies of Islam. O God, take the treacherous Jewish aggressors. O God, count their numbers. Slay them one by one and spare none." Qaradawi has gained eminence throughout the Muslim world by serving as the chairman of numerous Islamic organizations and operating on a variety of media platforms. His danger comes from his popularity in Qatar and across the Middle East, which stems from his position as chief ideologue of the Muslim Brotherhood. The most notable and lethal Brotherhood offshoot is Hamas, the Palestinian terror group, operating out of the Gaza Strip. Some analysts also argue that the Brotherhood has served as the ideological forerunner of modern violent Islamist groups, such as al-Qaeda and ISIS. Qaradawi maintains close relations with the leadership of Qatar, which has refused international demands to extradite the cleric. On January 17, 2018, an Egyptian military court sentenced Qaradawi in absentia to life in prison on charges of incitement to murder, spreading false news, and vandalizing public property in relation to the 2015 death of an Egyptian police officer. Prior to his association with ISIS-K, al-Muhajir, which translates to the migrant in English, was a mid-level commander in the Haqqani network, an Islamist militant group affiliated with the Taliban, and a member of al-Qaeda. In June 2020, al-Muhajir was appointed to lead ISIS Khorasan Province, or ISIS-K, which is the Afghanistan affiliate of ISIS. ISIS-K refers to the Taliban as apostates due to their willingness to negotiate with the US, apparent pragmatism, and failure to apply Islamic law with sufficient rigor. Al-Muhajir is the leader and head of operations of ISIS-K. According to US intelligence, al-Muhajir is responsible for approving all ISIS-K operations throughout Afghanistan and arranging funding to conduct operations. Al-Muhajir is thought to have masterminded the 2021 Kabul airport attack, a suicide bombing in which 183 people were killed, and for which the Taliban has sworn retribution. Ayman al-Zawahiri co-founded al-Qaeda with Osama bin Laden in 1988 and has led the group since bin Laden's assassination in 2011. Al-Zawahiri's path to extremism began early. He joined the Muslim Brotherhood when he was a teenager before joining the Egyptian Islamic Jihad, an organization that has since merged with al-Qaeda. Al-Qaeda attacks have resulted in the deaths of thousands worldwide, with the most deadly event being the 9/11 attacks. Al-Zawahiri himself has been indicted by the U.S. government for his alleged role in the bombings of the U.S. embassies in Dar es Salaam and Nairobi on August 7, 1998. Asterisk. The Taliban's takeover of Afghanistan in 2021 has been described by Rita Katz, executive director of the Site Intelligence Group, as the biggest boost to al-Qaeda since 9/11's. Many of Afghanistan's new rulers have ties to al-Qaeda, raising fears that the organization may be able to gain a foothold in the country once again. His rhetoric is primarily heard in official videos released by al-Qaeda. He does not have any known social media accounts. In videos, he called for Muslims to attack Jews and Americans, stated the UN was created to control the world through an irreligious and immoral ideology. In 1997, the U.S. State Department named al-Zawahiri as leader of the Vanguards of Conquest Group, a faction of Islamic Jihad thought to have been behind the massacre of foreign tourists in Luxor the same year. 2 years later, he was sentenced to death in absentia by an Egyptian military court for his role in the group's many attacks. In 1999, he was indicted in a U.S. court for suicide bombings carried out at the U.S. embassies in Kenya and Tanzania in 1998. Abdul-Malik al-Houthi is the military, spiritual, and political leader of the Houthis in Yemen. Badr al-Din, Abdul-Malik's father, remained the group's spiritual and political head until his death in 2010, at which point Abdul-Malik al-Houthi became the group's leader in every regard. Since assuming military control over the Houthis in 2004, Abdul-Malik al-Houthi has commanded the Iranian-backed rebel group through numerous cycles of conflict with the Yemeni military. Following the Arab Spring in 2011, Houthi shifted his rhetoric from rants disparaging the United States and Saudi Arabia to speeches that appealed to a broad range of Yemeni citizens. His popularity grew as he began to criticize high gasoline prices and Saudi drone strikes. In January 2015, the Houthis overthrew President Abd Rabbu Mansour Hadi's government in Sana'a, seizing government buildings in the presidential palace. By the spring of 2015, the Houthis controlled 16 Yemeni provinces in north and northwest Yemen. The Houthis imposed their ideology on the areas of Yemen they have captured. In mid-April 2021, Houthi militants evicted 20 academics and their families from university housing in Sana'a. The Houthis reportedly seek to install academics loyal to their cause within area universities. According to media reports, the Houthis have replaced 90% of school principals with pro-Houthi individuals. The Houthis have also sought to inculcate hatred of the group's enemies by printing and distributing images of dead children allegedly killed by anti-Houthi forces. Houthi propaganda also positively highlights drone strikes on Saudi Arabia and a hatred of Israel. A member of the Yemeni Teachers Syndicate has claimed the Houthis are enforcing a policy of cultural colonialism and the ideology of the Khomeinist revolution in Yemen through public education, effectively brainwashing Yemen's children. The Houthi offensive against Yemen's international-backed government has elevated the threat of disease and starvation in Yemen. According to an August 2021 UN report, approximately two-thirds of Yemen's population, about 20 million people, rely on humanitarian aid, while about 5 million people are one step away from succumbing to famine and the diseases that go with it. In Houthi-controlled territories, all but one fuel station has closed, resulting in shortages and wait times as long as a month for cooking fuel. The Houthis began an offensive on Marib, capturing Rahaba district on September 8, 2021. Yemen's internationally backed government had initially recaptured the district in July, but lost control to the Houthis after heaving fighting that resulted in the death of 65 fighters from both sides. In October 2021, local authorities issued pleas to the United Nations and international aid groups to intervene before the 35,000 people living in the central Yemeni province die of starvation. Sirajuddin Haqqani is the son of a former warlord who was a mentor of bin Laden and who set up the Haqqani network. Haqqani is wanted for his role in the assault on the Kabul Intercontinental Hotel. In October 2013, Afghan forces intercepted a truck bomb deployed by the Haqqani network containing some 61,500 pounds of explosives. It was the largest truck bomb ever built. Haqqani led the day-to-day running of the Haqqani network, along with his closest relatives. The Haqqani network is the most lethal and vicious element of the Taliban. They were the first element of the Taliban to embrace suicide bombings, a tactic they learned from al-Qaeda. There are concerns that, with Sirajuddin Haqqani in a leadership position within the Taliban, the organization will become more radical over time. This is indicated in a speech Sirajuddin delivered in October 2021 at a ceremony in Kabul honoring suicide bombers. During the speech, Sirajuddin labeled the bombers martyrs and heroes of Islam and the country. Sirajuddin holds a great amount of influence in surrounding countries. He is often called in to moderate talks between states and groups they consider a threat. In November 2021, Haqqani assisted in mediating talks between the Pakistani Taliban and the Pakistan government to aid in full ceasefire negotiations. Sirajuddin proclaimed himself the mastermind of a series of suicide bombing attacks and awarded the bombers' families $125 and a plot of land. In 2011, a squad of suicide bombers targeted the Intercontinental Hotel in Kabul, killing at least 10 people. The UN charged the Haqqani network with the crime. Haibatullah Akhundzada is the Emir, or leader of the Taliban. When Akhundzada came to power in 2016, the Taliban was divided internally. There were several competing factions, but Akhundzada unified the movement. After rising to power, he secured the backing of al-Qaeda chief Ayman al-Zawahiri, who labeled him the Emir of the Faithful. And in October 2021, an audio recording of a rare public appearance by Akhundzada was posted. The withdrawal of Western forces from Afghanistan in 2021 resulted in a swift rise of the Taliban, leading the movement to take Kabul and form a government. The Taliban's takeover of Afghanistan poses a particular concern to the West, as the Taliban previously provided sanctuary for al-Qaeda, allowing them to establish terrorist training camps within the country. Although the Taliban has claimed it will not provide sanctuary to jihadist groups per the condition of the U.S.-Taliban agreement of February 2020, the lack of Western forces on the ground has made it difficult to ensure that promise. There is a possibility that, once the West begins to pressure the Taliban government, the group will provide sanctuary to al-Qaeda once more. Europe in particular must prepare for the influx of Afghan refugees and ensure that any humanitarian aid is tied to conditions. After the Taliban's takeover of Afghanistan in August 2021, Akhundzada was named supreme leader of the movement, becoming responsible for overseeing the courts and judges. Akhundzada largely tries to stay out of the public eye, but he is known as a hardline religious scholar. While Akhundzada did take part in the Islamist resistance against the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan, he is known as a religious rather than military leader. Following the Taliban's fall from power in Afghanistan in 2001, the movement created a de facto governmental order that placed Taliban members, shadow officials, in control of specific areas within Afghanistan. The Taliban used these operational areas to counter the Afghan government and repel U.S. troops deployed in the country following the al-Qaeda orchestrated 9/11 attacks. Specifically, in the first 6 months of 2021, the Taliban contributed to the deaths of 699 civilians, with 1,345 others injured. Following the Taliban's takeover of Afghanistan in August 2021, media reports have suggested that the Taliban continues to target former members of the Afghan security forces, as well as other officials who have opposed the Taliban in the past. Ismail Haniyeh is the political chief for Hamas, a political and military organization that emerged in the Gaza Strip in the late 1980s during the first Palestinian revolt against Israel. Hamas receives financial and military support from Iran and has received significant funding from Qatar. Haniyeh has ties to other terrorist organizations, including groups affiliated with the Muslim Brotherhood and Hezbollah, and has personally met Hezbollah leader Hassan Nasrallah. Additionally, Haniyeh has thanked Iran for its support of Hamas. Haniyeh has also met with Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan, raising concerns internationally that the Turkish government has ties with Hamas leadership. Haniyeh primarily uses Twitter to communicate, while Hamas as a whole previously used several social media accounts to spread their message. Haniyeh appears to reject any form of coexistence or normalization with Israel. Last year, Haniyeh announced that the project of resistance in Palestine and the region will not be weakened or fall into a recession. Assassinations will only make us more strong and persevere and insistent on moving toward the liberation of Jerusalem and Palestine. On August 3, 2020, a statement by Haniyeh's office signaled Hamas's intent to continue to commit acts of terrorism against Israel in the long term. In September 2020, Haniyeh said that Hamas has missiles capable of striking Tel Aviv and areas beyond it from the border with Gaza. The U.S. Department of State claims Haniyeh has been involved in terrorist attacks targeting Israelis and Americans. Throughout the 1990s and early 2000s, Hamas dispatched suicide bombers to kill Israeli civilian and military targets, collectively killing hundreds of people. A 2007 study in the Journal of Economic Perspectives found that Hamas was responsible for roughly 40% of suicide attacks during the Second Intifada, which collectively killed more than 1,000 people. Between September 2000 and March 2004, Hamas carried out 425 terrorist attacks in Israel, the Gaza Strip, and the West Bank. This included 52 suicide bombings, which killed 377 people and wounded 2,076 civilians and soldiers. On October 7, 2023, Hamas led surprise attacks against Israel from the Gaza Strip. More than 1,200 Israelis and foreign nationals, including at least 35 U.S. citizens in Israel, were killed. Hamas and other groups also seized 253 hostages. Hossein Salami is the commander-in-chief of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, IRGC, Iran's primary instrument for defending the Islamic Republic against internal and external threats. The IRGC routinely engages in the violent suppression and censorship of Iranian citizens at the will of the supreme leader, Ayatollah Khamenei. and has ties with several terrorist organizations, including Hezbollah. The IRGC has been accused of orchestrating the 1994 bombing of the Ayman Jewish Center in Afghanistan, and was involved in the deaths of hundreds of protesters in 2019. Salami has threatened foreign countries, such as the United States or Israel, with violence on numerous occasions. In 2019, while addressing thousands of demonstrators in Tehran, he warned the UK, the US, Israel, and Saudi Arabia that Iran would destroy them if they crossed their red line. Salami has in the past welcomed the prospect of military conflict with both the United States and Israel. After car bombing killed 27 IRGC members in Iran on February 13, 2019, Salami declared that Iran would break the United States, Israel, and Saudi Arabia. The IRGC is the dominant military force in Iran and has carried out many of the country's key military operations. The IRGC was allegedly involved in the deaths of 59 Kurdish couriers, and in March 2021, as many as 23 unarmed fuel couriers and protesters belonging to the Baluch minority were killed in Sistan and Baluchistan province at the border of Pakistan.